Hey, everybody. I have noticed some very interesting things as I have started my coaching certification, and um, I wanted to share them and kind of document my own progress because it has been very interesting to me how how I'm sort of reacting going through this process and um, it's kind of shooting me right back to my olden days in school because I did not like school. It was very, very hard for me, and I made some decisions back in the day based on the fact that I wanted nothing more than to be done with school because yeah, it was really hard, and I love learning and I have no problem learning, but when it comes to quote unquote like formal or standard education, um, I'm having to kind of make adjustments and figure things out again and really sort of um, reframe and reprogram how I do things. And because my body's like going back to old times where I was stressed out. So I've had 1 week of classes and 1 week pretty much of doing homework. And I wanted to start talking about all of the different versions of reactions that I'm noticing and kind of how my compensation and my coping and all of that is going for myself. Starting with what we know is that I am best in the morning. I'm ready to learn, my creative zone, and I am not just overloaded, overstimulated from the events of the day or even the events of like the last couple hours, anything like that. I have to write things down and highlight things in order for me to remember or things that I find important, anything like that. And I love to read. I am a huge reader, but I do have a limited attention span. I can absolutely get completely lost in a book and not want to put it down. But my mind will wander, and I've absolutely had the experience countless times where, I all of a sudden come back to my mind comes back to the text that I'm looking at. And I think I have absolutely no idea what was on the past few pages. So that's an interesting thing to deal with, knowing myself now and um, what I need to do. So there's kind of some baseline things for me. So some observations that I have made. Currently, I have used my electronic notepad to organize my notes from the book, the textbooks that I'm reading, the journal entries and reflections that it's asking me to do, as well as my notes from class. So I have three separate folders on this electronic notepad so that I can organize and separate them out. And back in the day when I was in school, um, I didn't realize maybe I should put those in different sections. And so now I'm like, hey, now I'm not just like searching through pages and pages of just writing, trying to find what I was looking for. And now I'm like, oh, I'm looking for my notes from this or my entries from this. And then I'll say, okay, chapter two journal entries or chapter two notes, lesson two things. So I'm doing a lot better in that aspect of knowing where I need to go to find questions, notes, anything like that. I also did notate where my questions from the reading were as sort of a key to myself. And by that, I mean I put a question mark next to what I was reading when I wrote the question, and I wrote, or when I had the question, and then I wrote the question later in the notes so that I could keep the flow going. But that way, because we know I'm a visual person, um, the question next to that specific section will be like, oh yeah, I had a question about this. Um, I did not make myself finish the chapter because generally I would have been like, hey, I'm reading this chapter. I want to be done with it, so I'm going to finish the whole chapter. And I didn't used to like whatever. Like I'll come back and read it or I'll read it again, which I usually didn't. So I didn't make myself finish the chapter. Once I noticed that my mind was starting to wander and think about other things, and it wasn't actually um, intaking what I was reading, I stopped. And yes, that means I had already started a different section, and I kind of said, scrap that. I didn't my brain didn't actually register anything that I've looked over since I started this section. So we're just going to pretend I didn't even go there. Um, but once I stopped reading, I had another activity to do that helped with the creativity that I didn't actually have to think about. And so I did that for a little bit, and it allowed me to kind of work through the things that I had actually absorbed and think about that text and really kind of process it. So, um, and the other piece of that is a lot of people with ADHD are have to do something with their hands, whether it be fidget. You see, I'm playing with my lipstick right now. Um, and so it allowed me to do something with my hands so I had that kinesthetic piece. I didn't have to actually pay attention to what I was doing, minus staying in the lines and such like that. But I had a color in my hand and I was just coloring it. So it required essentially zero executive functioning. And then I highlighted the pieces of the book that I found interesting and important. And then I have these little, like, kind of plasticky, sticky things that I marked the page so it'd be easy to find later. And that's not a new concept, but back in the day, I'm like, okay, I'll highlight this and it'll be good. It's important. But then, I'd go back to the text after, a day or whatever, or in class later, and I'd be like frantically flipping through it, thinking, I highlighted it, where is it? Or, maybe I highlighted a lot of things, and I'm like, no, that's not the right one. So they're at least marked so that I can find them easier. Because the other thing that happened with yay short attention span and getting distracted is as like generally I would say, oh, I remember I highlighted something about this, or I had a question about it, or something like that. And I'd start flipping through, and soon I'd get so frustrated that I couldn't find what I was looking for. All of a sudden, I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, what question I was going to answer, and waste of time, energy, right? So, those are the things that I have started doing. Now, physical observations. When I started doing this, when I started doing my homework, I was relaxed because it was in the morning. My mind was clear and engaged again because it was in the morning, and um, I had set out the time to do it, so I wasn't like task switching in between all these other things and thinking, oh, I need to go do this, 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 and this before I forget. And so my mind was clear and it was engaged. And my breathing was normal because when I am stressed, I get very short of breath, and then that also wastes energy and sort of gets me overwhelmed. And last but not least, so far, when my mind had wandered a couple of times, I didn't get frustrated because I used to. And, people are like, yeah, I get frustrated reading. I don't like reading because my mind wanders and I have no idea what I just read. I know that about myself now. So when my mind wandered a couple times, I didn't get frustrated. And that is when I observed that it was time to do something else. I took a little concentration break and did the coloring book, and it gave me that chance to be creative. So understanding that no matter what I'm reading, understanding that yes, my mind is likely going to wander. And at that point, okay, Lauren, it's time to shut down and do something else because um, it's time to give your mind a break and let it process what it just read. You come back to it later when you are now ready to pay attention again. I will say, as I always going through school growing up, I always kind of had this like impending, like, I have to get this done, I have to get this done. And part of that with the anxiety is um, I was a I was and I wasn't a procrastinator. I I had such a worry that I wasn't going to get things done or that something like an assignment was hanging over my head or a long paper was had to be due or something like that. And so I was totally the one that I sat down, knocked the entire thing out at one point, yay, hyper focus, and then I turned it in early so that I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to worry about whether I turned it in. I'm like, yes, I did. It's there. I'm done. Move on to the next thing. And so I've noticed now that like I haven't had to do like actual homework like this in a lot of time or in a long time that is like you need to have this done before you come to class, and it's some reading, it's some discussion questions, all of that. And so, right back to um, there was nothing online when I was in high school, but for sure in college, I'd have to go in and do discussion questions or, um, you know, different modalities of things anyway. And I'm finding because my brain is sitting here being like, you have to have this done. You have to have this done, not knowing exactly how long it's going to take. Um, what I'm gonna have to do as far as helping myself to remember it, and then being able to actually contribute to class and not being like, well, I did all the material, but I have zero idea any of it. And knowing that, okay, I'm gonna go read all of these things, which is fine. But how am I going to help myself reinforce the material? Because I need visual things, not just the text, not just copy. So having to figure that out has kind of brought back some of those like anxious, stressful things and feelings for me because I'm like, okay, how do I now like kind of overwrite that, lean into it and overwrite it so that I help myself to learn it. And maybe that will be creating my own visuals. Maybe that will be, I really don't know right now. Not recreating the wheel and finding a model or a visual PDF of something that is already online. So I'm like, oh, okay. Now when I'm talking about this or reading about it, I can use that visual in my head. One thing I just thought about a few minutes ago before I started this was going and getting resources and visuals before I even start doing the next chapter so that I can already have those ready to go. And I will be able to intake and learn the information faster and better with being able to kind of glance over at, okay, here's what they're talking about, and not having to think about, oh, I need to go do this later because, there's already the executive functioning coming in with like, oh, another task, oh, another task. Um, so that is where I'm at right now. So far, I have done a good amount of the reading. I have copied and pasted the discussion questions so that I can go type those out and actually have a good answer and have the questions with the answers there. And then I can just go copy and paste them in the discussion and I don't have to go switch back and forth. So some of my, again, coping skills, tools, learned lessons from, you know, previous hardships, etc. But that is where I'm at right now, and very interested to see how the class this week goes with how I've shifted around and been like, okay, no, you can do this because I'm not expecting the stress or the anxiety that has kind of come with this, which I love all the subject matter. So it's not a problem of me not caring about it. But my brain's like, "Oh yeah, I like these." And my body is just like, um, recognize this. Didn't like it the first time. Not a huge fan of it now. Like this is a lot of extra effort and not very fun. So I am kind of leaning into that and saying, okay, I get you, but we're going to learn how to do it a different way and learn how to do it better to really sort of reprogram those neural pathways that of, self-doubt, of trauma, and anything else, and prove to myself that I can absolutely do this. I just have to learn it how I need to learn it for myself. So, either end of this week or next week, I will do an update and we'll see how this continues to play out. See you next time.